chivalry and knighthood typically had a series of conventions and everything else past a certain point was up to your personal interpretation. Now, the personal version I usually go with is, I read Geoffrey de Charny's, I think that's how you say that name, was a very famous French knight, or at least very important French knight in the 13th, 14th century. He wrote a book called Knight's Own Book of Chivalry. I take that version in that at the core, knighthood was a very martial code. It emphasized loyalty, martial skill, and a certain degree of martial pragmatism. Now, there was a lot of convention that went along with this. That, you know, certain social things, like a knight was expected to be polite because that is what you were supposed to do as a knight. It was, but chivalry or chivalry, all that means is the art of riding a horse and in your teeth. And that got turned into the art of being a knight, and that got turned into what it means to be a knight. So, as time went on, it grew increasingly complicated with each person having a different interpretation. It was never a uniform thing, and it was even varied from country to country or county to county or place to place, and also depending on your rank. Knights were also not a uniform group. So like with the Fresne, these things were extremely complicated. You could meet two knights with completely different ideas of what it meant to be one. So I wasn't so much going off Arthurian legend as I was going based off standard medieval chivalry, because Arthurian legend is a very hyper-idealized version of chivalry. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, kind of from the same question, but I also don't really know a lot about Arthurian legend and all that, but the way that you were speaking about these characters, it seems like they're unbalanced people, like they have an excess of passion, an excess of honor, or an excess of God. Do you feel that it is their excess of these traits that's why we kind of idealize these people? Like if they had been balanced people, we wouldn't idolize them?
Well, the word I used, I think the word that fits was paragon. They represent, the two characters are completely unrealistic. No one could really be like this and be like a balanced person. But they represent a perfect ideal of such a thing. Like Roland is the perfect ideal of a valiant, loyal crusader. As the Song of Roland was meant to inspire French knights of the 12th and 11th and 12th century to go on crusade. I believe it was basically a piece of propaganda. Very well written and very important propaganda, but a piece of propaganda nonetheless. Whereas Tales of Courtly Love are trying to talk about something else. They're trying to sort of trying to teach the nobility to act in a different way. They're trying to teach them, hey, it's okay. You can love your wife. You can do all these things. You can have a life, basically. So they're not characters in the standard way you might see them in a book today. They're meant to be bigger than that. They're larger than life. So yes, they probably are. Roland is probably way too duty-bound than is healthy. Lancelot is way too passion-driven. By far. I didn't even go into half of it. The dude's nuts. So, not sure I gave a conclusive answer, but
that's a good answer.
Anybody else?
I have a question kind of along that line. Is there a knight that you can think of, just randomly off the top of your head, that would be an example of this more moderate knight?
A good example is William Marshall. He is widely regarded as the greatest knight who ever lived, except no one's ever heard of him. He was an English knight in the 1200s. He was loyal to a fault, served a succession of different English kings, even through rebellion and war. He went on crusade and was noted to be particularly religious, and even joined his king on crusade. He was extremely skilled in the art of combat and he was not originally a landed knight. He was born the third son of he was the third son, was actually about to be catapulted into a castle wall to make his father surrender. But when I think it was King Stephen or something, series of medieval conflicts. I can't remember all the names all the time. I do try though. When the king supposedly remarked that the child wasn't crying, he couldn't bring himself to send the child screaming into a wall. Also, supposedly when his father, Willie Marshall's father, was asked for a comment, he said, "I have the hammer and anvil to make another, so I don't care." Anyway, so he earned his fortune and reputation by being very skilled at arms and winning tournaments. And through that, and through his loyalty, he eventually rose up the ranks until eventually he became one of the most powerful lords in all of England. He's a pretty good example, and a pretty good example of what a good knight looked like in the period.
Thank you.
And it's more of a comment. Ashley, I thought your reading was really sophisticated. I've really never thought about that reading at all, and taking the fire throughout all three parts of that, and looking at it as refining and going